On the evening of September 30th, 2025 at 10 p.m. local time, residents of central Philippines were going about their usual business. No one suspected that in a few seconds their lives would change forever. A magnitude 6.9 earthquake struck with monstrous force. The epicenter was located just 16 kilometers from the coastal city of Bago, with a population of 9,000 people. But the most terrible thing was that the focus lay at only 5-kilometer depth from the surface. This meant destructive energy didn't have time to dissipate in the Earth's thickness and fell upon people at almost full force. Two-story houses turned into piles of concrete in seconds. In the city of San Remigio, a real tragedy unfolded. During a basketball match, part of the sports complex collapsed right onto spectators. The hospital in Bogo was overflowing by midnight. Medics provided aid right on the street because the hospital building could collapse during repeated tremors. And they didn't take long to arrive. During the night, 379 aftershocks were recorded, and by the morning of the next day, their number exceeded 700. The ground beneath the Philippines continued shuddering. In the mountain village of Bogo, a landslide occurred that covered local residents' homes. They tried to move heavy equipment there, but roads were destroyed, and then something frightening emerged. This earthquake became the deadliest in the Philippines since 2013, when in October on the neighboring island of Bohol, a magnitude 7.2 tremor occurred. But most terrible wasn't even this. Why did a terrible earthquake suddenly occur in this beautiful tropical country? What did scientists discover when studying this place? And how is this event connected to recent earthquakes in Kamchatka, Myanmar, and Thailand? The Philippines is located in one of the most dangerous places on the planet, a giant ring 4,000 kilometers long encircling the Pacific Ocean. This is the Pacific Ring of Fire, where more than half of all the world's volcanoes are concentrated and 90% of all earthquakes on Earth occur. The Philippine archipelago is located right on this ring, in a place where several tectonic plates collide simultaneously. Therefore, on one hand, it's not surprising an earthquake occurred here. But at the same time, not everything is so simple. Here meet the Eurasian Plate, Philippine Plate, Indo-Australian Plate, and Pacific Plate. They move, collide with each other, one goes under another, and each time stress becomes too strong, a sharp shift occurs. Seismology experts immediately noticed this strike's features. The focus was located at only 5 kilometers depth. Usually during earthquakes, destructive energy is partially damped, passing through Earth's crust thickness. But here, this didn't happen. Energy struck at practically full force. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology began recording aftershocks one after another. By Wednesday evening, there were already more than 700, and by Thursday the counter exceeded 4,000. The ground beneath the Philippines literally couldn't calm down. These aftershocks' magnitude varied from barely perceptible magnitude 1 to 5. Local residents said sleeping was impossible. You just start falling asleep when shaking begins again. But this wasn't all yet. Immediately after the earthquake, authorities announced a tsunami warning. When the epicenter is located in the sea and the focus is shallow, there's real danger that the seafloor will shift and create a giant wave. A tsunami can come in several minutes or in an hour, and people on the coast must immediately evacuate to high ground. That's what happened. Thousands of people grabbed children and most valuable things and ran away from the shore. A station in the bay recorded a maximum wave height of 64 centimeters. Yes, this isn't a catastrophe, but an indicator that the sea really reacted to the underground strike. Fortunately, the warning was canceled when it became clear seafloor displacement didn't cause a dangerous wave. However, the situation was complicated by the fact that just days before the earthquake, a tropical storm passed through central Philippines. Torrential rains eroded slopes, saturated soil with water, made ground unstable, and when the earthquake struck, this wet soil simply slid down. Landslides covered houses, roads, and entire villages. Rescuers tried to get there with heavy equipment, but roads were destroyed. They had to go on foot, and each minute of delay meant chances of finding someone alive under rubble were rapidly decreasing. The president of the Philippines personally visited the most affected areas to assess the damage scale. What he saw there was horrifying, and then came news that made everyone understand. This earthquake wasn't just a natural disaster. Scientists began talking about how the Philippines might face something much more terrible, and this could happen very soon. But where did such conclusions come from? A few days after the earthquake, specialists from the Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology arrived in San Remigio City to inspect the territory. What they saw shocked them. 32 ground collapses formed on the earth, 32 holes that weren't there a week ago. Some of them were located right next to residential buildings. These zones were immediately declared dangerous. Some collapses were filled in, but this was only a temporary measure. The ground beneath people's feet became unreliable, and no one could guarantee new holes wouldn't appear tomorrow. Then specialists began mapping the fault in the Bogo Bay area that became the earthquake's source. The work was dangerous because aftershocks continued. At any moment, new shaking could begin, and then being in the fault zone meant risking life. Besides collapses, residents reported deep cracks on roads. The main highway in Tabagon City was crossed by a crack several dozen centimeters wide. Motorists bypassed it cautiously, understanding asphalt under wheels could split even wider at any moment. Another day later, National Police stated all missing persons were found. This sounded encouraging, but reality was grim. Found didn't mean saved. As a result of the earthquake, more than 17,000 people were affected. Imagine a medium-sized city's population. All these people somehow felt the element's consequences. Local authorities introduced price fixing on basic goods and fuel to ensure necessary products' accessibility for people affected by the earthquake. After all, as we know, there are always those who try to profit from others' misfortune, so such measures were necessary. But while the Philippines dealt with this earthquake's consequences, scientists began talking about another, much more serious danger. In the country's capital, Manila, with a population of several million people, what many ominously call the Big One could occur. In the fault area in Manila's capital region, seismic activity has been recorded that could reach more than 7 on the Richter scale. Such earthquakes in this area occur every 400 years. The last recorded earthquake in this area occurred in the 1600s. That was almost 400 years ago. The math is simple and frightening. If the cycle is 400 years and the last event was 400 years ago, the next one could occur at any moment. Moreover, the big one could be much more destructive than what happened in Cebu. Such a strong earthquake in Manila could lead to collapse of about 68,000 buildings. These aren't abstract numbers. Just imagine what will happen if this occurs in Manila at night. That's precisely why the Cebu earthquake was so destructive. It caught people off guard at nighttime. Filipinos understand this, and earthquakes for them aren't an abstract threat, but part of life. But what scientists began saying after the Cebu event frightened even them. It turned out this earthquake wasn't an isolated case. To understand what's actually happening, you need to look deeper. In these places, not just a collision of several titanic plates is occurring, but something more serious. The Indo-Australian plate is moving north at several centimeters per year. Sounds small, but over millions of years, this movement created the Himalayas, the planet's highest mountains. About 50 million years ago, the plate on which India now stands crashed into Eurasia, and since then, it continues pressing. This process creates colossal stress in Earth's crust. India descends, gets pushed under the Himalayas, while the Indo-Australian plate's eastern edge rises, soaring above the Pacific platform. But this is only part of the picture. Nearby is the so-called Sunda Plate, or Sunda Shelf, which supports Indonesia, part of Southeast Asia, and the Philippines. This plate experiences pressure from all sides. From the east, the Pacific Plate presses on it. From the west, the Indo-Australian Plate presses, and under this pressure, the Sunda Plate begins submerging. Submersion occurs unevenly. Somewhere the plate descends faster, somewhere slower, somewhere it stretches forming cracks, somewhere it compresses like an accordion, and all these processes cause earthquakes. That's precisely why, in recent years, abnormal flooding has become commonplace in Indonesia, Cambodia, China, Vietnam, Thailand, and the Philippines. Land is descending and water comes where it wasn't before. For example, in 2011, catastrophic flooding occurred in Thailand, when river flow was slowed due to terrain changes. Now, all these countries constantly suffer from flooding. In Jakarta, Indonesia's capital, seawater regularly floods streets. The city is slowly going underwater, not only due to global climate change and sea level rise. The ground itself under Jakarta is descending, the Sunda Plate is submerging, and stopping this process is impossible. The Philippines is located on the edge of this Eurasian plate scythe. They experience pressure from the east, where the Philippine plate submerges, from the west, where all these complex movements occur. Islands are warping, weak points either suddenly rise or descend, creating chaos. Experts studying data concluded processes are accelerating. Warm water flow through the Florida Strait slowed by 4% over the past 4 decades. But most alarming didn't begin in the Philippines. On March 28, 2025, just months before the Cebu earthquake, a devastating magnitude 7.7 earthquake occurred in Myanmar. This was one of the strongest earthquakes in the region in recent decades. The epicenter was located in central Myanmar, 16 kilometers from Shuaigean City. Destruction was monstrous. The strike was so powerful it was felt even in Bangkok, neighboring Thailand's capital. And Bangkok was at enormous distance from the epicenter. Imagine what force was in the focus itself. Scientists immediately began studying this event. It turned out the earthquake occurred along the Sagaing Fault, one of the world's most dangerous faults. This fault stretches 1,000 kilometers right through Myanmar's center. It's often called the earthquake superhighway. The Sagaing Fault formed as a result of the Indian Plate's northward movement. When India crashed into Eurasia, this movement's eastern flank created a giant crack in Earth's crust. And along this crack, strong earthquakes regularly occur. After the main shock in Myanmar, more than 100 aftershocks were recorded. The ground couldn't calm down. And then the Philippines earthquake happened, and scientists began asking, is this coincidence or connected events? Can one earthquake trigger another at 1,000 kilometer distance? Few know, but a group of Chinese seismologists published a study just days before the Myanmar earthquake. They analyzed seismic data over the past 146 years and identified 6 main periods when series of strong earthquakes occurred in China and adjacent regions. Their conclusions were frightening. The region may be entering a new phase of seismic activity. Stress fields are shifting northeast, increasing earthquake risk in the Himalayan area. And the Myanmar earthquake confirmed their fears. A scientific theory exists that strong earthquakes can trigger a chain reaction. When a powerful underground tremor occurs, stress in Earth's crust redistributes. In some areas it decreases, in others increases. And if a neighboring fault was already close to the critical point, even small additional stress could be enough for it to rupture. Russian scientists from the Institute of Earth Physics confirmed the Myanmar earthquake could affect the region's seismic situation. One specialist explained that any earthquake that occurred somehow influences subsequent events' occurrence. Influence degree depends on the occurred event's magnitude and distance. The farther, the weaker the influence. It decreases approximately with distance squared, so direct impact of Myanmar's earthquake on the Philippines is unlikely, but indirect is quite possible. If the entire fault network is already stressed, even a small additional push in the system can become the last straw. Actually, if we look at all of 2025, we'll see 15 major earthquakes already occurred in Asia: Kamchatka, Japan, Indonesia, Pakistan, China, Philippines. The ground beneath Asia is literally shaking. Seismic stations record thousands of tremors of varying strength. Many of them cause local destruction, trigger aftershocks and landslides. But that's not all. On May 12, 2024, a strange event occurred. The remotely operated underwater vehicle Nereus was descending into the Kermadec Trench northeast of New Zealand. The vehicle reached 10-kilometer depth and was suddenly crushed. Communication broke off. Scientists were shocked. Nereus was one of only 4 vehicles ever to reach the ocean's deepest place in the Mariana Trench. It explored hydrothermal vents in the Caribbean Sea. This was a reliable, proven vehicle. What could crush it? Analysis showed a frightening thing. The Kermadec Trench became deeper. Scientists calculated for a certain depth, but encountered greater. Pressure turned out higher than expected, and the vehicle didn't withstand. But how did the trench become deeper? The answer lies in plate movement. The Indo-Australian plate's edge is rising, but the Pacific plate in that region is submerging under it. One plate's rise doesn't drag the other along. On the contrary, submersion accelerates. The ocean floor collapses. This means processes in Earth's crust are accelerating. What previously took thousands of years now happens in 1 decade. Plates move faster, stress accumulates faster, and they discharge faster too, in the form of increasingly frequent and strong earthquakes. What does this actually mean for people living in this region? Specialists speak cautiously, but their words' essence is clear. Risk of new strong earthquakes in Asia has increased. Philippines, Indonesia, Myanmar, Thailand, southern China, and Japan. All these regions are in high danger zones. After the earthquake, Philippine authorities strengthened building control. Schools, hospitals, and administrative buildings were inspected. Many turned out unsuitable for use. Cracks in walls damaged load-bearing structures. One repeated earthquake, and these buildings will collapse. Local residents now live in constant fear. Each time shaking begins, even small people run into streets, and scientists continue monitoring seismic stations. Data shows aftershocks in the Philippines continue. Yes, they've become fewer, but they haven't stopped completely. The ground still hasn't calmed, and no one can say when this will end. The only thing that can be said for certain, the ground beneath our feet isn't as stable as we're used to thinking. And new Kermadec trench studies showed us scientists don't yet know everything about what's happening underground. That's all for now. If you liked this video, give it a like and subscribe to our channel.